You know, when you hear the name Leonardo da Vinci, your mind probably jumps straight to the Mona Lisa, right? Or the Last Supper. But those finished masterpieces, they're just a tiny, tiny fraction of his story. The real Leonardo, the essence of his genius, lived inside thousands of pages of chaotic, brilliant, and deeply personal notes. And we're going to dive in and see what secrets they're still holding.
Okay, so take a look at this. For 500 years, this is all anyone saw. A page from his notes on how birds fly. You can see all these observations, designs for flying machines, all written in that famous backward script of his. For centuries, it just seemed like another fascinating but typical page from his scientific mind.
But what if, for half a millennium, something else was hiding there in plain sight? Something way more personal, buried right underneath all that ink? What if it was a lost self-portrait of the master himself? Well, that's the historical detective story we're getting into today.
To really get how a secret like that could stay hidden for so long, we've got to go back. We need to understand what these notebooks actually were, because this wasn't some neat, organized library. Oh no, this was the raw, unfiltered, chaotic output of a brain that literally never stopped working.
When Leonardo died back in 1519, he didn't leave behind a couple dozen sketchbooks. He left behind a storm of paper, over 7,000 loose sheets, just crammed with notes and drawings. This was his entire life's work, a private universe he'd built on paper.
And the scope of that universe, it's just breathtaking. I mean, one minute he's sketching out plans for parachutes and terrifying war machines. The next, he's dissecting human bodies to understand anatomy. He's studying how water flows, designing new musical instruments, even jotting down little fables and philosophical thoughts. The man was interested in, well, everything.
And what about that famous script? For centuries, everybody thought this mirror writing must be some kind of secret code to hide his incredible discoveries. But the real reason? It's actually way more practical. Leonardo was left-handed, so writing from right to left was simply the easiest way to keep his hand from smudging the wet ink as he went. It was all about speed, not secrecy.
So he leaves behind this unbelievable collection of human thought. But the story of what happened next? Wow. It's a total drama of neglect, ambition, and just pure dumb luck. It's the story of how one of the most important paper trails in history was almost completely lost.
Leonardo knew exactly how valuable his work was. He left all 7,000+ pages to his most loyal student, Francesco Melzi. The idea was that Melzi would organize it all and publish it for the world to see. I mean, what an incredible honor, but also what an absolutely impossible burden.
Just try to put yourself in Melzi's shoes. You've got thousands of pages with no dates, no index, written backwards, filled with weird abbreviations and words all jammed together. He spent 40 years of his life trying to make sense of it all, but in the end, it was just too much. The project was too massive, and he died without ever publishing a single page.
And after Melzi died, that's when the real chaos started. His son, Orazio, couldn't have cared less. He just stored the papers in an attic. From there, they were sold off, stolen, and scattered all over Europe. A sculptor named Pompeo Leone got his hands on a huge chunk of them. Then Napoleon came along and seized a bunch as spoils of war, and some parts were just gone. Get this, as recently as 1965, 2 entire notebooks were found in Madrid after being lost for more than 250 years.
And that sculptor, Pompeo Leone? In an attempt to make the collection look more grand and impressive, he did something that makes historians today just cringe. He took Leonardo's original notebooks, cut them up page by page, and then pasted them onto these huge sheets of paper, completely scrambling the original order and context of Leonardo's thoughts forever.
So that brings us to the modern era. We're now in a time where scholars and scientists are still trying to piece this gigantic intellectual jigsaw puzzle back together, and they're using technology that Leonardo himself could never, ever have dreamed of.
Just think about that number for a second. 252 years. That's how long the Madrid Codices, we're talking hundreds of pages on mechanics and engineering, just sat on a library shelf totally forgotten because they were mislabeled. I mean, the rediscovery in the 60s was huge. It was a massive reminder that major pieces of our own history can be sitting right under our noses.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Back to that one single page from the Codex on the flight of birds and the secret it held for 5 long centuries. So the big question is, how did we finally see what was underneath?
Well, the answer is some pretty amazing digital restoration. See, instead of even touching the priceless original document, researchers scanned the page at an unbelievably high resolution. Then, a computer program analyzed every single pixel, learning to tell the difference between the color of the black ink and the color of the red chalk drawing hidden underneath. Then, it could digitally erase the ink and use the surrounding data to reconstruct the image.
And here's the result. On the left, you see the page as it's always looked, but on the right, a face emerges. A young man, you can see the long hair, a light beard, that really intense gaze. A face that many experts believe is a strong match for the only other known self-portrait of Leonardo, which was drawn when he was a very old man.
So, after all that, this incredible detective story, what's the big takeaway here? Why does the chaotic journey of these notebooks and the secrets they're still giving up, why does it matter so much to us today?
Because they show us a mind that was just operating on a whole different level. For instance, in his studies of water, Leonardo drew and described the swirling eddies you see in a flowing river. He was the very first person to give this a name, turbulenza, what we now call turbulence, centuries before modern physics even began to grapple with it.
His notebooks are just packed with evidence of a man who was asking questions nobody else was even thinking to ask. He was this solitary figure figuring out the rules of the universe all by himself, hundreds of years ahead of schedule. There's this great quote that says he was the man who awoke too early in the darkness while all the others were still asleep. And that just nails it, doesn't it?
And that's really the point. The story of these notebooks is such a powerful reminder that our understanding of the past isn't some finished book on a shelf. It's a living, breathing investigation. It's a puzzle we're still solving, and we're constantly finding new pieces and developing new ways to see things that were once completely invisible.
Which leaves us with one last, kind of mind-blowing thought. If a self-portrait of arguably the world's greatest genius could hide in plain sight for 500 years, what else is out there? What other masterpieces, what other revolutionary ideas are just sitting there, waiting for us to finally find the right way to look?